Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Conscious Grief series. I am joined today by co-founder Jill Cowan, co-founder of Healing to the Max. Welcome, Jill.
Oh, thank you so much. I am just thrilled to be here today and honored that you asked me. Delighted.
Well, I'm really delighted that you said yes, and I'm very grateful to Caro Brookings for being the connector. And I was very taken when I read about Healing to the Max and the incredible work that you're doing as a result of Max's death. So perhaps first of all, tell us about Amazing Max and the creation of Healing to the Max to start with.
Oh, thank you so much. Max is my 16-year-old son, and he died by suicide in early March of 2015. And Max came to myself about 5 months before he died, and he let me know that he thought he was struggling with what he called was a depression. And we, as parents came together and we assured him that we were going to get the best form of support for him. And I thanked him for telling me. I told him I was scared, but not to worry. We were going to help support him through this. And we sort of came up with some, strategies. We went to our doctor right away to get a referral to child and youth psychiatry here where we live in Canada. And I reached out to all of his teachers. We sort of attacked it from all fronts. And we were put on a waiting list for that appointment. We have a friend who is a doctor of psychiatry. And I said, Max had let us know that he was struggling. And did he have anyone in mind who would be a good connection with a teen boy? So we got that name and we went to our family doctor, our primary caregiver, and said, would it be possible to get Max on this, connected with this person? And we just sort of went forward and, we were hopeful that he was going to, we just knew Max was sort of this really confident and competent young man. He had a part-time job. He had a steady girlfriend. He had a group of friends from early childhood that he still, he was still very, very much in their friend group, and they all had the same part-time jobs. So, yeah, he was a wonderful athlete and played on several sports teams. You call it football. We call it soccer. He also played American football. I don't know if people know too much about American football, but there's different tiers here. So he was a first string player only in his second year. That's a really big accomplishment. He's really dedicated to doing his best in whatever he decided to do. And he was just, I don't know what the comparable year would be in the UK. But being 16, he still had 2 more years of high school. I think you guys are pretty much done about 16, 17 years old, and then you go on, whatever that looks like for your young people, if they're doing college or a university, post-secondary. But for our kids, you go till about you're 18 years old. So he was sort of right in the middle of that high school experience. And He did have goals to go into environmental architecture. He really enjoyed traveling. And so when we went to underdeveloped countries, something that was really important to Max was improving their quality of life through sustainable infrastructure. That was something he was really passionate about, art and architecture. And so that was something that he was sort of structuring his education so that he would be able to achieve those goals. And we had just come back from a family trip, and he sort of felt like he was feeling a little bit better. He was picking his classes for the coming year. And he had just applied to go on what we call the History Study Tour program. So he had signed up to spend some time in Europe and travel with his classmates. And you have to write an essay, to be accepted into this program. And he wrote about having depression, but that he felt like he was coming out of it. And the day before he died, he took his girlfriend on a special birthday date. It was her 16th birthday, and he had planned this whole thing. He didn't have his driver's license yet. He was set to go 2 days after he had passed away for his driving exam. So I picked the kids up at the movie theater. They had dinner first, and they played some games at what we call an arcade. I think you have arcades there, right? Where you put I used it. They're a little bit different though. I really enjoyed when I was in Scarborough. There's this great arcade down by the seashore, and you take as many, I don't know. Yeah, I think you have pennies, right? Like the little copper coins, they're pennies. We have them here in Canada as well. And you sort of put them in this machine and they file in, and, and then you try to, knock a big load of cash loose, and then you're the winner. You never win. But anyways, our arcades are a little bit different. You can play interactive games and sort of like win tickets, and then you win a prize, and it's all good fun. So they did that. And then they went to a film, and I picked the kids up from the movie theater. So Max walked his girlfriend to the door, gave her a kiss goodnight, and they had made plans to come over to our house for supper the next day. And he was, we said our good nights, and I said I was really tired. My husband and I had just come back from a trip, and he said, "That's okay, Mom. I'm really tired too. I think I'm just going to go to bed." And I said, "I love you." And he said, "I love you." And he went down to his room, and he was gaming online with the son of our other co-creator, our other co-founder of Healing to the Max, Anjanette Corbet. Her son, Aiden, is Max's best friend. And they were online gaming as young boys do. Call of Duty is a really big thing. And I think it's a collaborative game. You do it with your friends. And they were playing a game. And somewhere in the early hour mornings of that night, that weekend night, Max kind of paused the game, and he texts, "I'm going to have a snack." And they sort of took a break. And instead of having a snack, Max died by suicide. And the next day, we discovered that he hadn't survived the night. And so, over the next coming months, we found that there was a large gap in services for families like our own. And we found nothing specific for parents who had lost a child in this traumatic way. And there was no support at all for Max's brother and sister. Our daughter was just 11 years old at that time. His older brother was 17 years old. And then, of course, all Max's close friends. And so as time went forward, that's when Anjanette and I started having those conversations. Would this be something that we do somewhere down the road? Would we start talking about writing a program of support? Anjanette has her master's degree in social work and has 26 years of group therapy experience. And after we lost Max, she started taking everything that she could, all the conferences and training courses she could find on bereavement and bereavement by suicide. And that's when she came across the concept of narrative therapy.
So yes, tell us. I've not heard about that. What is narrative therapy for the viewers?
Yeah, so narrative therapy is a relatively new concept, and it was first or really came into creation by two social workers, Michael White of Australia and David Epstein, originally here in Canada. I think he lives in New Zealand now. And it really builds a strong foundation for all of our programs of hope and healing for survivors of a loss by suicide. And narrative therapy really is a wonderful foundation because it's a very curious type of therapy. So it works with a lot of different people. You can add your own cultural nuances, your own spiritual beliefs, because it's really free from judgment. And so basically, what it is it allows individuals to separate themselves from the problem. And so it creates this this sort of foundation of externalizing the issue rather than internalizing it. And it really relies on individuals' own strengths. So really it's really judgment free. And so really what it's going to do is get a person to recognize their own strengths and then start to use those to build that foundation of hope and healing in a way that that individual is familiar with already, but maybe really because the problem and this problem is grief, and our programs in particular are designed for loss by suicide. So there's many compounding and complex aspects of that type of loss. And so narrative therapy just became this brilliant way where we could connect with everybody on whatever level of healing they were at, whether they were newly bereaved, really weeks after their loss, or they're further down the road. We've had people join the program who are 7 years down the road. They find it beneficial because it really is something that has no limits. There's no parameters to narrative therapy. And so that's it's been really successful and a really beautiful part of this program that we've designed. And we also recognize those 5 stages of grief. I think there's 2 that have been added now to that original research that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross did back in the day when she sort of was the mother of that, that grief research, right? And she identified those 5 stages, which are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And now there's also shock that has been added, and testing. So shock, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, testing, and acceptance. And what narrative therapy sort of, how we recognize that those are all a part of grief. We challenge that happens in a linear fashion. And also Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, her research was based on someone accepting a terminal diagnosis. And so it was an individual who was, or individuals who were learning to accept that diagnosis, and not really for bereaved people. And so that's where that sort of disconnect happens, right? People think, okay, well, there's 5 stages and I'm going to go through them, or 7 stages that have been recently added. And we're going to go through them, and then we're just going to live again. And we know when we lose someone, or we lose a couple of people who are so close to us and we love so dearly, we know that that really is something that doesn't ring true for us. And it can almost be shame-inducing because you feel like you're not doing well if you're not moving through in this linear fashion and getting to that place of acceptance and finding peace. And so what narrative therapy does is we move away from that traditional notion of acceptance, and instead, that traditional notion of not acceptance, but rather closure. And we invite you to practice the art of saying hello again. And that really is honoring that everlasting and enduring connection that you have with your loved one in your life today. And so it's just become something that our participants really feel empowered by, because for myself as a mother, I don't want to not have Max in my life. I don't want to have a day where I don't say his name, or I'm ashamed to say his name, or I don't celebrate him in some way during those calendar days. his birthday, Christmas, all these different things that we celebrate as a family. Of course, I want to honor Max in some way. We love him. He was a large part of our life, a joy, a light in our life, and we want to continue that connection with him. And so it feels really unnatural just to say, okay, well, of course I accept that this has happened. I don't think that I have ever met a parent who does not accept that their child is not here in the physical. We know on a very deep cellular level, we can feel that our loved one is not with us. Any bereaved person will understand that there's going to be an empty chair that Christmas. And so this approach just is limitless in the ways that we can include our loved one in our life as we go forward, and try to learn to live with our grief and joy hand in hand.
Such an inspiring story, Jill. I mean, I love the healing to the max name of your program, and how when we spoke previously coming up to this interview, and what you've shared also here is how Max had a real desire to want to help people in with his architecture, environmental studies, and that you're continuing this legacy of Max by helping people as well now with this program, which is dedicated to him, and the way that you want to say his name every day and remember him on all of the calendar days and inspire other people to do the same through the narrative therapy. It sounds like that's a lot of almost like the kind of continuing bonds theory.
Exactly. That's exactly that thing that I think separates this type of approach to grief and loss than any other, because instead of, moving towards closure, we just, we refute that and invite you to continue that everlasting and enduring connection. So, yes, and thank you so much. Yeah, we love the name as well. When we were going through and thinking about things, we just thought, I thought, should I have his name in it? I would really like to honor his name in some way. And he used to refer to himself as the Max, in the third person sometimes, because young boys are silly, and he loved to be silly and entertain his family and friends. And so he didn't take himself very seriously. And so he loved to make fun of himself almost. It wasn't a, I don't know, what would you call it? Like, he was never sort of, condescending in his sense of humor, right? He was just this lovable soul that wanted to make everybody feel happy. And he was just so much fun to be around. So we kind of love to have that healing to the Max, because it really is a tribute to his name and how he referred to himself when he was trying to make other people feel happy and joyful. So that was a really great way to honor him. And every time I see someone write those words, and share their experience in the program, I just think, oh, he would love this so much. And I know that he does. Because that's my belief. My belief is that, our energy does continue. So I love to think of that connection, right? Because I don't have those skills that he had, but I can continue his love of helping people in this way.
Beautiful. And if people who are listening would like to know more about your programs, would you like to share a little bit about the structure of them and how you work? Do you work online with people? Do you do retreats, or perhaps just share a little bit about it?
Oh, thank you. So we do have many branches of support. we have 2 intensive programs. So one of them is designed for parents, guardians, and grandparents who have lost a beloved child by suicide. That's a 12-week intensive program. Currently, we're facilitating that online over Zoom. And so week to week, we introduce a topic or a couple of different aspects of this complex grieving process. And then we definitely get into that, and we have a whole bunch of guided journaling exercises, short answer questions. We have therapeutic art projects that we do together during our time. We do have a little bit of homework, but we do have homework mentors. We keep the connection going with our participants. So we have a private group messenger that we set up so that participants can keep in touch with one another and us as facilitators. We have 4 facilitators, a minimum of 4 facilitators in every session. And so you're really supported as you go through those 12 weeks. And at the end, we really love the final project that we do together. And we have our participants, we invite them to introduce their loved one to us through their loving eyes. And they do they have a whole session just dedicated to introducing their loved one to us so that we can start to focus on their life and not just on the way that they've died. And so we really get into everything in those intensive programs. We work a lot on those emotions that can keep us trapped in a cycle of suffering. And we really do share a lot of practical strategies on how to support yourself as you go forward. And we keep the connection going. So we keep that group chat open. So once you are a participant of one of our programs, we keep that connection going. And we do have the option to have an in-person healing retreat at the end. That's not always an option for people because we work with people. We're here based in Canada. We recently had a mother join us from Ireland in this last parent intensive. We have many from our wonderful neighbors to the south, the United States of America. We've had some join us from New Zealand, Australia as well. So it's a wonderful way that we can facilitate the program because we can spread the hope and healing farther and wider. But whether or not we're able to connect in person, that might have to wait. We do travel. So at some point, we're always hopeful that we're going to connect with people in person. That's our goal. We haven't not met someone at this point. We've all connected, whether they've been able to participate in an in-person healing experience or not. We also have an 8-week program for youth and teens. So anyone, any survivor, any type of survivor, it doesn't have to be a brother or sister, it could be a best friend, a cousin, anyone who is struggling with a bereavement by suicide. So those ages 11 through 18 years go through a program that is written specifically for their demographic and the challenges that they face as young people who are bereaved. Children grieve. And they're also often referred to as the forgotten grievers because everyone's worried about mom and dad, and they have big lives. They're very social creatures. They still have to go to school. They still have to attend their activities. Sometimes if they're older, they'll have a part-time job. They'll have interpersonal relationships beginning. So it's really important as a program that we offer support to young people. And we have a branch called Healing Together. Now that is a drop-in style program. We have 3 branches. One is Healing Together. That is for all type of survivors, ages 18 plus, so an adult style group where we come together once a month and we talk about whatever. We sort of invite people. Sometimes we'll have a theme, but we always leave time for people to contribute. If someone is struggling with something in particular, this last session we had, a lot of people identified that they were experiencing anger. And so that was sort of keeping them stuck. And so we spent a lot of time talking around how do we cope with that? How do we release the power of anger? so that we can continue on our healing journey. And we also have a group for young people. So 11 through 18 years, again, that's a drop-in style program where survivors can come. It's facilitator led, but it's a wonderful community where those young people can connect and they can feel less isolated in their experience of grief, because I think that that's something that's incredibly important for all of us, but especially for those young people, to validate that they're not alone. And we also have a men's only group. We're really excited about that, and we love that program so much. The male experience of grief, I often think that, just having gone through it with my own family, and my husband sort of almost did double duty. You know, he was bereaved and he had lost Max and he was grieving, but he also had to support everyone else in the house. And all, you know, myself, his wife was bereaved, and our surviving children. And so I think that the experience that our partners have, our male partners have, is different than our own. And so it's important that we set aside somewhere where they could come together and have that connection and support one another through certain themes that they are struggling with and that they need a little more support on. And again, you know, that connection is so invaluable. That's sort of one of my top 3 strategies when you're bereaved. And I never would have believed this as a newly bereaved parent. And actually, my husband and I, when the counselor suggested to us that we find a support group and connect with other parents, we thought, this cannot possibly help. We are barely surviving. We have enough of our own pain. How are we going to listen to another's? And when we sort of got to that point where we were sort of stuck and nothing was sort of shifting this suffering that we were in, I just sort of went, you know, I found a group and I went. And I was so angry. I just remember standing outside that door where the group was meeting, and I looked at that word, right? You know, for the people who had lost a loved one by suicide. And I just stared at it for a full 10 minutes. And I just couldn't even move. I felt like all the blood in my body had just risen to my head and had heated up 50 degrees. I was so angry that this was my life and I didn't belong anywhere. And I'm now about to go through these doors, and I don't know what I was expecting, right? You know, I just thought, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. And I just sort of, in the back of my mind, I knew it was socially awkward to do that. I'm like, they know I'm out here because they heard the door open, they heard footsteps, they know somebody's going to come and they're going to look at me, and I just better do this. And so I kind of made myself really small, and my head was down my shoulders, and I just kind of peeked up and I saw a table where you could get tea and some refreshments. So I went over and I thought, okay, I'll make myself a cup of tea. That's normal, right? Normal people do that. I'll go do that. And I got a cup of tea and I sat down and I just looked at the square of the table that I could see in front of me. You know, I wouldn't even lift my eyes up. And then I sort of noticed that people were talking, and they were talking easily with one another, and they weren't gasping for breath when they were speaking, because I remember not even being able to speak because the emotion was choking me. And one of the facilitators was a mother, and she had lost a child 17 years ago, and her hair was beautifully done. She had some pretty makeup on, and she was wearing a blouse, I remember, and it was like a cheerful pattern. And I remember just thinking, I don't know how she's doing this, but if she can do it, maybe there's a way that I can too. And I met a sister survivor, and I really was hopeful to connect with a sister because of my own daughter and her struggle with losing her beloved brother. And I don't really remember a lot else from that meeting other than I remember them being so kind and so compassionate, and there was no judgment in that place. And I just remember feeling that first tiny little seed of hope. And so I always recommend to people, find a compassionate community of support. It is not going to be sitting around a Kleenex box and sharing your trauma. You will find that this is going to be something that will be a guide to how to not only survive, but then start to build those pieces, those tiny little pieces together into a life that you're familiar with. And I think that that was one of the most compounding aspects for myself. I just, I lost my identity. If I wasn't, people just knew me as Max's mom. I had a pitcher of juice in my garage and cookies, and people would come by and they'd be like, "Hi, Max's mom." And, they knew that we were going to have pizza and kids could camp out on the weekend playing their games in our basement. Boys would walk down the street with televisions under their arms, and so when we lost that connection, I just went, oh my gosh, I completely lost my identity. And that's a really difficult thing that a lot of people don't talk about. Grief is not just sadness. It's not just that, I think people think, oh, you're sad, you should just get over it. There's no getting over a loss. There's no, but that doesn't mean that you can't learn to live well with it. And a big part of that is finding out what your life is going to look like, because everything is so raw and painful and unfamiliar. And for me, the last decisions I felt like I made as a mother added up to a deadly conclusion. And so I was completely devoid of any sort of self-esteem or confidence or knowledge on what to do. So I always say the best thing to do is go to people who have done it. Connect with those people who have walked that same road that you're now on. You hate it, you're on it, I hate it for you. But connect with those people who have been there. And that's going to be an empowering source of support for you. It will not be something that brings you down. So I always encourage people to find a compassionate community, and we do have one if you've lost a loved one by suicide. We're also branching out into the area of suicide prevention. We have a couple of projects on the go. You can check all that out on our website. Very, very easy to connect with all the work that we're doing. Here in Canada, we have a program especially designed for Aboriginal people so that we can incorporate their cultural nuances and honor their connections, and really make this program specific to their loss and how they view hope and healing. And so there's a whole bunch of different branches, and you can go to our website, www.healingtothemax.org. You can find myself on Instagram, Jill_Cowan, TikTok, Jill Cowan. I think it's Jill Cowan 2, and it's at Healing to the Max. You can find us on Twitter at Max Healing. It's really, really easy to get a hold of us. We're on Facebook as well, Healing to the Max. If you put that in, Healing to the Max, it'll come up, suicide grief support, and you're in the right place. And we have facilitators who are standing by all the time. We will connect with you and make sure that you get into the right form of support where you're at. And we also have a one-on-one mentorship program. So if you're a survivor and you don't think group therapy is for you, that's just not something you're ready for, or you are participating in our groups, but you just need a little more connection, that's absolutely something that we're going to do. We can also refer you for crisis counseling, short-term crisis counseling. We have a group of professionals attached to the program. So we really have a really great option and a variety of options that will work for a number of people who have suffered this traumatic loss.
Wow, Jill, thank you so much for everything that you have created. It's really profound, and so many different, streams of groups and support, and it really encompasses that Healing to the Max title. I'd like to ask people at the end of the interview if you had to sort of describe the term conscious grief, how would you interpret that for this title of this series, Conscious Grief?
Oh, I love that. How powerful, Tara. I couldn't love your approach and foundation to your own support that you're lending to people who are bereaved. Conscious grief is something that I think is very meaningful and something that you need to find ways to incorporate that into your healing journey that makes sense for you. And for you, I love your total body holistic approach. And that's something that we recommend as well. Grief is something that you can't ignore. It is definitely going to manifest in your life. For myself, for many months, I just internalized everything. I thought, okay, this has happened. I'm still a mother. I have to go forward. I'm very open about sharing how difficult it was to find self-care or practice self-care. I just didn't feel like I was deserving of that. And it did manifest in many physical ways that I'm still coping with 8 years down the road. I had 2 cardiac episodes. I have grown tumors in almost every part of my mothering body. If you can imagine it, I won't quantify those areas for people, but it was really, really difficult for me to survive. I couldn't even take a sip of water during the day. I couldn't eat. I was about 80 pounds. I don't know how many stone that is, but I'm 5'8". I'm quite tall for a woman, and so it was something that I really struggled with. And so I think when I said, it's time, I need to find ways to consciously approach this instead of just trying to hold it all in and waiting for it to pass, right? I thought, okay, it's acute right now. Of course it is. Our lives have been ripped apart. And of course I'm grieving. And then I just sort of held it all in and I thought, okay, this is going to pass. It didn't. And it very nearly killed me. And so I think that when you find ways that are supportive to consciously address this, find your support communities, go to professionals for support in the areas of, total body wellness. Start practicing those things. Journal writing was really big for me. If you need any sort of guidance, there are people out there. Find them online, find those connections that feel right for you. And people are there to help you make a plan to consciously grieve.
Oh, yes, I like that a lot. You make a plan to consciously grieve. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
And I know that you have a lovely gift. So tell the viewers what your free gift is.
So my free gift is just a very simple PDF. You can download it from a link, and it is my top 3 strategies of support when you're newly bereaved. And this is for everyone. This isn't suicide-specific loss, even though our programs are. This will be helpful for anyone who is currently trapped in a cycle of suffering from a bereavement. My top 3 strategies, they're very simple. I really like making things simple because I know when I was newly bereaved, it was really hard to concentrate and focus on anything, and also to retain, right? Because of that fog. And so the simpler, the better. This won't be hard for you to read at all. And I hope that you do.
Amazing. Thank you very much for that, Jill. And thank you so much for your time and for being here. I'm so grateful to know you and be able to refer people to healing to the max. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Tara. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening. Bye. Bye-bye.